Hey everyone, and welcome back to That 90s Pod. Back again with another deep dive into 90s history. Sometimes we focus on the fun stuff like, the music and the fashion and the pop culture.
Yeah.
But today we're going a little bit darker.
Yeah, a little bit heavier.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
wow.
talking about the 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
Yeah, a pivotal moment for sure.
Yeah, a moment that, really sent shockwaves through the decade, didn't it? It changed so much about how we thought about safety, how we thought about cities, and even how, our anxiety started showing up in, our entertainment. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the early 90s vibe,
Yeah.
post-Cold War,
Right.
there was a lot of optimism in the sense of okay, things are going to be great.
Yeah, the future's bright.
Exactly. But this event really kind of shook that feeling of invincibility,
Definitely challenged it, yeah.
It introduced this new element of vulnerability that I think really permeated the rest of the decade.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't it's easy to think back and be like, oh, the 90s, everything was, grunge music and good times.
Right.
But there was a lot going on under the surface.
Definitely. And that's what's so interesting about this, right?
Yeah.
The early 90s weren't all just sunshine and roses, I mean,
Nice.
yeah, there was that post-Cold War optimism, but underneath that, there are all these anxieties brewing,
Hmm.
worries about the economy,
Yeah.
immigration, cultural shifts, all this stuff was bubbling up.
Right. It wasn't just all Nirvana and, flannel shirts, right?
Exactly. And then you have the World Trade Center itself. I mean, think about what it represented.
Yeah, it was like
This enormous symbol of American power,
Okay.
like this beacon of capitalism right in the heart of New York City.
Yeah, it was huge.
So it's tragic, but it also, in a way, makes sense that it would become a target.
Yeah, like a very symbolic target.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, and let's talk about the people behind this attack, because this wasn't just some random act of violence.
No, not at all.
There was an ideology.
This was a meticulously planned operation, and it was orchestrated by Ramzi Youssef
Right.
and a group of Islamic militants.
Yeah.
And their goal was actually pretty chilling. They wanted to cause massive casualties, obviously, but also to cripple the U.S. economy.
Yeah, they wanted to make a statement.
They wanted to send a message, and they very deliberately chose a target that was loaded with meaning.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's just crazy to think about, how one event like that can just shatter this sense of security.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like New York City,
Yeah.
Imagine,
It was a city that, up to that point, felt very much invincible.
yeah, and, even for people who weren't in New York City, it was broadcast everywhere.
Right, exactly.
It became this collective experience of vulnerability.
Yes, and it made you feel like, oh, wow, it could happen anywhere.
Right, exactly.
And it really hit home for me because, I had an uncle who was actually working in Manhattan that day.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And he would tell stories about the chaos, the evacuation, the fear in the air.
Wow.
And it really highlighted the human cost of this attack.
Right.
It wasn't just about buildings and politics. It was about the real people whose lives were upended by this act of terror.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, it makes you think about how, this event, in a lot of ways, it marked a before and after
Absolutely.
in how we perceive safety, especially in cities.
Right. It's like a line was crossed.
Yeah, definitely.
And it wasn't just about the immediate fear and the trauma.
Or-
This event, it seeped into our culture, even our entertainment. You start seeing it reflected in movies.
Yeah.
Think about a film like The Siege, came out a few years later,
Oh, yeah.
set in New York City. And terrorism is front and center in the plot.
Yeah. It's reflecting this unease that had become part of the national conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so true. And it wasn't just action movies or thrillers, right?
No.
Even sitcoms.
Even sitcoms.
Those shows that were supposed to be our lighthearted escape from reality.
Yeah.
They started to reflect this shift too.
It's interesting.
I remember that episode of Friends
Oh, yeah.
where they're all freaking out about taking the subway. And it
Yeah.
was this subtle nod to that lingering anxiety after the bombing.
It's almost like our pop culture became this mirror,
Yeah.
reflecting the very real anxieties that people were grappling with.
Yeah. Terrorism wasn't this far-off concept anymore. It was
Right.
something that hit close to home, something we were all trying to make sense of.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just about fear either, right?
Yeah.
This event sparked this whole, debate about how we respond as a nation, right?
Oh, a huge debate.
About how to balance security with, individual freedoms.
Yeah, this tension between safety and liberty.
Right, right.
And that tension is still with us today.
Yeah, for sure.
This bombing really kicked off those crucial conversations about security measures, surveillance, immigration policies.
Yeah.
It was a defining moment.
Yeah.
And it really forced the U.S. to confront this new kind of threat.
Yeah,
And those debates, they're still incredibly relevant today.
they are, for sure.
Yeah.
And, if you are enjoying this deep dive, this sometimes heavy
Yeah.
deep dive into 90s history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Yeah. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends about that 90s pod. And we'll be right back with more
Yeah.
on the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and its lasting impact.
Coming right up.
All right, we're back, and we're still digging into this 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
Yeah.
We talked about the context, the
Right.
cultural impact, and all that. But let's actually get into some,
Yeah, let's get into
the nitty-gritty.
the details.
The details, of the attack itself.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't just,
It wasn't just symbolic.
it was like
It was a really sophisticated operation.
right, like the planning that went into this.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
And what's really striking is the sheer audacity of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, the bomb,
Like,
they placed the bomb in a Ryder truck.
wait, a Ryder truck?
Yeah.
Like, the ones that...
Like you rent when you're moving.
yeah.
Like,
That's crazy.
except this one was packed with over 1,200 pounds of explosive.
Oh, my God.
Carefully formulated, like a recipe for devastation to inflict maximum damage.
It's like, I can't even imagine, first of all, how did they get all that explosive material?
Right.
And, how did they assemble it and transport it without anyone noticing?
Right. And their objective was even bolder
And just, blowing a hole in the basement.
than that. Yeah. They weren't just aiming to cause damage. They wanted to topple the North Tower into the South Tower.
What?
Yeah.
Make one fall into the other?
Like a domino effect.
Oh, my God, that's terrifying. I mean, just the thought of those towers collapsing on each other,
It's almost unimaginable.
it doesn't even compute in my brain.
Yeah.
Did they actually come close to achieving that?
So thankfully, the towers held. They were more resilient than the attackers anticipated.
Okay.
But the damage was still severe. 6 people lost their lives.
Wow.
And over 1,000 were injured.
God. I mean, it's a testament to the building's design, I guess, that it even withstood that blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I can only imagine the chaos and the fear that must have gripped everyone inside when that bomb went off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the aftermath, it really exposed some major security flaws at the World Trade Center.
Like what?
I mean, before the bombing, security measures were pretty lax. It was a different time,
Yeah, I guess, we didn't have the TSA and all that stuff.
Exactly. And after the bombing, the Port Authority, which manages the World Trade Center, they launched this massive security overhaul.
Yeah.
So they installed a network of new surveillance systems, beefed up police presence, implemented way stricter access controls. It was a wake-up call.
They had to show people that they were taking it seriously.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a stark realization that even these symbols of American strength could be vulnerable.
Yeah. So, did those changes extend beyond just the World Trade Center?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did other places start upping their security too?
Absolutely. It wasn't just limited to the World Trade Center. The bombing kind of triggered this national conversation about terrorism and how to combat it.
Okay, yeah.
So airports, government buildings, other high-profile locations,
Yeah.
all of them started to implement heightened security measures.
So basically this one event, kind of changed the security landscape of the whole country.
It's true. We kind of entered this new era of awareness, a heightened sense of vigilance,
Yeah.
because the U.S. had to confront this new kind of threat,
Yeah.
one that wasn't confined to battlefields or, far-off countries.
Right. It could happen anywhere.
Terrorism had reached the heart of America, and the response was, it had to be swift and it had to be comprehensive.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the people behind it,
Yeah.
were they ever caught?
Yeah, so the mastermind, Ramzi Youssef,
Right.
he was actually captured in 1995 after this massive international manhunt.
Wow.
And he was convicted on multiple charges, including conspiracy to murder and terrorism.
Yeah.
And he's currently serving a life sentence.
Well, that's at least a little bit of, comfort, I guess, knowing that he was held accountable for his actions.
Right.
But, I mean, obviously the scars of that day,
They run deep.
both physical and emotional, they run deep.
Especially for those who were there, who witnessed the horror firsthand. They carry those memories with them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's heavy stuff.
It is.
It's really, really heavy stuff.
The 1993 World Trade Center bombing, it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And it really altered the landscape of the 90s and beyond.
Yeah.
You know, it's a reminder that peace is fragile
Yeah.
and that even the most seemingly secure places can be vulnerable.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
But it's important to remember these events, to learn from them, and to honor the victims.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as we kind of wrap up this conversation,
Yeah.
let's not forget that in the midst of all this darkness,
Yeah.
there were also these incredible stories of resilience and hope.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So stick with us here on that 90s pod
Yeah.
as we delve deeper into the aftermath of
Yeah.
this, you know,
Pivotal event.
pivotal, really pivotal event. All right, so we're wrapping up our deep dive on that 90s pod into the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And man, it's been heavy stuff.
It is.
But, you know, super important to understand, you know,
For
like
sure.
these events and how they shape not just like the 90s,
Right.
but like literally the world we live in today. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think as we're kind of concluding this episode, it's important to remember that the 1993 bombing wasn't just about destruction.
Right.
It was also about, like, the resilience that emerged in its aftermath,
Yeah.
the way people came together, the innovations that came out of it. Like, that's a really vital part of the story, too.
Yeah. That's such a good point. We've talked a lot about the fear and the changes and all that. But
yeah.
like amidst all of that, there was this incredible strength,
Oh, absolutely.
this determination to like rebuild and move forward, you know?
Absolutely.
The human spirit is something else, man.
It really is.
Like think about all those first responders who like rushed into danger that day.
Right.
All the everyday New Yorkers who are helping each other out.
Right.
It's powerful,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's a testament to our ability to like come together when things get really tough.
It's that human spirit, that ability to adapt and overcome adversity that really shines through in moments like these.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it didn't stop there, right?
Right.
Like it sparked this whole wave of innovation.
Yeah.
In security measures, counterterrorism strategies, all that stuff. It was like this giant wake-up call
Right.
that forced everyone to like rethink how we protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And it led to new technologies, new approaches to, you know, preventing these kinds of attacks from happening again.
It's like a bittersweet legacy.
Yeah.
You know, a tragedy spurred these advancements that, while we wish they weren't necessary,
Right.
they have undoubtedly saved lives.
Yeah.
And even though the threat of terrorism is still with us,
Yeah.
the lessons we learned from the 1993 bombing, they're still shaping security protocols all around the world.
So, you know, it is a story of tragedy,
I think it is.
but it's also a story of resilience,
yeah.
innovation, and like finding purpose in the face of adversity.
It's finding the light in the darkness.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can find a way to adapt, learn, and grow stronger.
Yeah, man. Well said. Well said. This has been a tough conversation,
It has.
but like incredibly important, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us for this deep dive into the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. We hope you found it insightful.
Yeah, insightful and maybe even a little bit hopeful amidst all the heaviness.
Right, right. And before we sign off, we want to encourage everyone listening, share this episode with your friends, family, whoever.
Yeah, spread the word.
These are conversations that like we need to be having.
Exactly.
You know, understanding history to like better navigate the present and the future.
Knowledge is power.
Word.
And the more we know about the past, the better equipped we are to create a safer, more informed world.
Yeah. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more fascinating deep dives into the decade that was the 90s. We've got tons of great episodes coming your way.
Yeah, we do. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, stay rad.